I want you to think about something right now. Think about your father, your grandfather, the men who raised you, the men in your neighborhood, the men you grew up watching. Most of them worked hard. Most of them showed up. Most of them sacrificed. And most of them died without ever breaking free. Not because they were lazy, not because they were stupid, not because they did not try hard enough, but because nobody, not their fathers, not their schools, not their churches, ever taught them the ancient laws of wealth that the wisest men in history discovered thousands of years ago. In ancient Babylon, the richest city that ever existed on the face of this earth, there lived two farmers who worked side by side in the same fields, under the same sun, in the same soil. They worked the same hours. They sweated the same sweat. They endured the same heat and drought and hardship. After 20 years, one farmer owned land, cattle, and a home of stone. His children were educated. His name was respected in the city. The other farmer was still working the same field, still renting the same mud hut, still sending his children to beg at the market. What separated them was not luck. It was not favor. It was not talent. It was knowledge. Specifically, the ancient knowledge of how money truly works. Knowledge that one man had and the other man never sought. George S. Clason wrote about this in The Richest Man in Babylon, one of the greatest wealth books ever written, drawing on the actual financial wisdom of ancient Mesopotamia. The ancient Babylonian teachers had one foundational rule that separated the wealthy from the poor. It was simple, brutal, and almost universally ignored. That sounds obvious. But here is the devastating truth. Most men keep nothing. They earn money and immediately give it all away. To landlords, to merchants, to lenders, to habits, to appearances, to everyone and everything except themselves. Akkad, the richest man in Babylon, taught his students, "For every 10 coins you earn, spend only 9. The 10th coin belongs to you first, before your landlord, before your merchant, before your family even." In the modern world, most men pay everyone else first. Their mortgage, their car payment, their subscriptions, their credit cards, their habits. And whatever is left, if anything is left, goes to them. The ancient law says the opposite. Pay yourself first, before anyone else receives a single. King Solomon, the wealthiest man who ever lived according to ancient records, wrote in the book of Proverbs, "The soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied." Now, before you think Solomon was simply talking about laziness, understand what he was really describing. He was talking about a poverty mindset, a mental prison that most men live inside their entire lives without ever seeing the bars. The poverty mindset has 5 characteristics that the ancients identified clearly. First, it believes wealth is for other people, not for men like me. The poor man looks at the wealthy and says, "That is not my world." The wealthy man once looked at wealth and said, "I will learn how that world works." Second, it trades time for money forever. The poor man sells his hours. The wise man builds systems that earn while he sleeps. The ancient Babylonians called this making your gold work for you. Third, it avoids discomfort at all costs. Every investment of time, money, or energy carries temporary discomfort. The man who cannot tolerate discomfort cannot build wealth. Period. Fourth, it spends to look wealthy instead of investing to become wealthy. The ancient Babylonians had a name for this man, the man with a fat purse but an empty soul. He drives the chariot but rents the stable. Fifth, it blames everything outside itself, the economy, the government, the rich, the system. The poor man is always the victim of something. The wealthy man is always the student of something. The Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius in a letter that has survived 2,000 years. It is not the man who has little, but the man who craves more that is poor. Here is a pattern that destroys most men financially, and it is so invisible that most men never see it happening to them. A man earns $1,000 a month. He spends $1,000 a month. He gets a raise and now earns $1,500 a month. Within 60 days, he is spending $1,500 a month. This is what economists call lifestyle inflation. But the ancient Babylonians simply called it the curse of the expanding appetite. Every time income rises, desire rises to meet it. The bigger house, the newer chariot, the finer clothes, the richer feasts. And the gap between what a man earns and what a man keeps stays exactly the same, which is nothing. The Stoics practiced something called voluntary poverty, not because they were poor, but to train their appetites. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the entire Roman Empire, regularly slept on a simple soldier's cot, ate plain food, and wore modest clothing. Not because he had to, but to remind himself that his happiness did not depend on luxury. A man who can live on less than he earns, regardless of how much he earns, is a free man. A man whose appetite always matches his income is a slave to his own desires. In the ancient city of Babylon, Akkad, the wealthy teacher, warned his students about one of the most dangerous traps a man can fall into. Do not trust the advice of men who are not familiar with the subject on which you seek counsel. Most poor men take financial advice from other poor men. They listen to their broke uncle about investments. They take business advice from their friend who has never built a business. They follow the financial wisdom of people who are drowning in the same water they are trying to escape. Proverbs 13:20 says, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." The ancient world understood something that the modern world has forgotten. Your 5 closest companions will determine the direction of your life more than almost any other single factor. If every man around you has a poverty mindset, their thinking will seep into you like water into stone. Slowly, invisibly, until the cracks appear and you wonder why you are broken. The ancient Babylonians had a practice. Every man who wanted to build wealth was required to spend time regularly in the company of men who had already built it. Not to flatter them, not to beg from them, but to absorb their thinking, their habits, their standards. Here is the single most important financial concept in all of ancient wisdom, and the one that most men today completely ignore. Akkad taught it this way. Gold in a purse is gratifying to own, and satisfieth a miserly soul, but earns nothing. Gold that we earn from our labor and save must be put to work, so that it breeds more gold, as a flock of sheep breeds more sheep. The Babylonians understood compound growth 4,000 years before modern finance gave it a name. They knew that money saved and intelligently deployed would grow. Not fast, not dramatically, but steadily, relentlessly, like a river carving a canyon, not in a day, but across centuries. Albert Einstein, centuries later, called compound interest the 8th wonder of the world. He said, "He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it." The poor man works for money. The wise man makes his money work for him. Every coin that sits idle in a poor man's pocket is a soldier who could be fighting for his financial freedom, but is instead sitting in the barracks doing nothing. In practice, this means every dollar you save is not just $1. Invested wisely over 20 years, it becomes $5. Over 30 years, it becomes 10. The man who starts early and stays patient becomes wealthy almost by the simple passage of time. Aesop, the ancient Greek storyteller, told a fable over 2,500 years ago that every child knows but almost no adult applies. The ant worked through the summer. The grasshopper sang and danced and enjoyed every warm day. When winter came, the ant was warm and fed. The grasshopper froze at the ant's door, begging for food. We all nod at this story. We all say, yes, of course. We all agree the ant was wise. The grasshopper life looks like this in the modern world. No savings, no investments, no plan. Just income in and expenses out. Living paycheck to paycheck. One emergency away from disaster. One job loss away from ruin. One health scare away from financial collapse. Proverbs 6:6 says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest." Notice what Solomon says. The ant needs no commander. No one tells the ant to save. No one forces the ant to prepare. The ant does it because the ant understands the nature of time and seasons. Summer does not last forever. Youth does not last forever. Good health does not last forever. The earning years are finite. The man who does not prepare in abundance during his summer years will beg in his winter. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Of all the reasons men stay poor, this may be the most common and the least talked about. Fear. Fear of failure. Fear of looking foolish. Fear of losing what little they have. Fear of trying and discovering they were not good enough. And so the man does nothing. He thinks about starting the business. He imagines investing one day. He plans to learn the skill when the time is right. And the time is never right. And the days become years. And the years become a lifetime of almost. The ancient Stoics had a practice for this, premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. They would deliberately sit with their worst fears, look at them directly, ask, if this happened, what would I do? Could I survive it? Could I recover? And almost always the answer was yes. Yes, I could survive it. Yes, I could recover. Yes, the worst case is not as terrible as my imagination painted it. The man who faces his fear directly loses his fear. The man who avoids his fear lets it grow until it becomes the walls of his own prison. Benjamin Franklin, who studied the ancient wisdom deeply, wrote, "An investment in knowledge pays the best interest." The ancient Babylonian teachers always told their students, before you invest in land, before you invest in cattle, before you invest in any merchant venture, invest in your own ability to produce value. Because a man can lose his land to drought, he can lose his cattle to disease, he can lose his investments to a dishonest merchant. But no one can take from him what he has built inside his own mind, his skills, his knowledge, his wisdom, his discipline, his ability to think clearly and act decisively. The man who is the most valuable version of himself will always find a way to earn, in any economy, in any season, in any circumstance, because the world will always pay generously for the man who can solve its problems. Read 1 hour every day. Learn one new skill every year. Study the men who built what you want to build. Attend the seminars. Find the mentors. Invest in the courses. Let me ask you the question I opened with, one more time. Think about your father, your grandfather, the men before you. They were not failures. They were not weak. They were not cursed. They simply never received the knowledge you just received today. And now you have it. The ancient laws are clear. Pay yourself first. Destroy the poverty mindset. Control your appetite. Seek wise counsel. Make your money work. Prepare in your summer. Face your fear. Invest in yourself. The cycle of poverty is not broken by luck. It is not broken by a windfall. It is not broken by a lucky investment or a fortunate opportunity. That man can be you, starting today. If this wisdom stirred something real inside you, subscribe to The Bearded Scholar right now. Because every single week we bring the ancient wisdom of the greatest minds in history directly to you, so you can think better, build better, and live with more purpose and power than any generation before you. And drop a comment below. Tell me, which of these 8 laws hit you the hardest? I read every single comment personally. Stay wise, stay hungry, keep building.